we will discuss about temperate lakes and reservoirs. Page 485. Physical factors. The principal physical factors that affect distribution and abundance of fish in lakes are temperature, light, water movements, water level fluctuations, size, and substrate. Temperature. Fishery managers have long recognized that the basic fish fauna of lakes is determined in large part by temperature. Thus, they have tended to divide lakes into three basic types. First, cold water lakes, in which the dominant sport or commercial fishes are salmonids. Second, warm water lakes, in which the dominant sport or commercial fishes are centracids or black bases and sunfishes, persids or perch and wally, iscusids or pike, and persitides or white, yellow, and striped bases. And last, two-story lakes with warm water fishes in warm upper layer or epilinium and cold water fishes in the cold deep water hypolimnium. Next, light. Light has many rather subtle effects on fish distribution patterns both within lakes. Most warm water lakes are rather turbid, so the typical deep water fishes are species that do not rely on vision for prey capture, such as catfish, carp, and suckers. Water movements. Steady and predictable currents such as those in the oceans seldom occur in natural lakes, yet the movement of water by winds can have considerable impact on distribution within a lake. A series of days with wind blowing from the direction can cause zooplankton to concentrate along the leeward shore. This may result in a concentration of zooplankton feeding fishes as well. The distribution of larva fishes that drift in the surface waters of lake may be quite patchy because of temporary gears and currents created by winds, although these same currents also concentrate the zooplankton on which the larva fish feed. Next, water level fluctuations. Water level fluctuations are primarily a problem to fish in reservoirs and lakes which regulated water levels. In natural lakes, however, flooded shoreline marshes are important spring spawning sites for fish as a northern pile or Exox Later in the year, emergent vegetation serve as cover of the young of many species such as largemouth bass and common carp. Drops in water level also may create barriers to migrations by lake-dwelling species spawning in streams. Size. Three aspects of lake size particularly affect both the number of species and the total fish production in lakes. First, surface area. Second, mean depth and shoreline length. The relations of surface area to number of species is not strong because so many factors, especially geographic factors, can affect the number of species. Substrate. It is quite difficult to relate to the overall distribution pattern of lake-dwelling species to the presence of a particular kind of substrate. Nevertheless, substrate does have a strong influence on fish distribution within a lake, especially for spawning. For example, spawning sunfishes and black bases or centracidae requires area that are soft for digging a nest depressions but firm enough that the embryos will not be smothered in mud. Sculpins or Catidae. darters or Persidae, and some minnows or Cyprinidae lay their eggs on the other side of overhanging rocks or logs. Yellow perch or Percaphlebicens and many minnows scattered adhesive eggs over beds of aquatic plants. Lake trout lay their eggs in deep water among concentrations of boulders.
Gases. The only dissolved gas in lake water that exerts a major direct effect on fish distribution is oxygen. Although carbon dioxide is indirectly important to fish through the carbonate bicarbonate cycle and the relationship of this cycle to primary production. Primary production is the main source of oxygen in lakes. Although the actions of wind and waves is an important secondary source, the absence of these two sources of oxygen combined with the removal of oxygen through decay of organic matter is the reason that major fish kills occur in shallow, ice-covered lakes during the winter. Ions. The influence of dissolved ions on the distribution of lakes dwelling fishes is complex because the concentrations of the various ions in a lake affect not only the fish but also every other organisms that is present. Moreover, the chemistry of the lake's water is related to that of the surrounding rocks, soil, and plant communities. So broad relationship between fish distribution and lake chemistry may be the result of, at least in part, of geography coincidence, temperature factor, or temporal factors. The composition of the fish fauna in most lakes rarely is constant. It is likely to change as a lake ages, as the climate fluctuates from year to year, as the abundance of species changes from season to season, and as fish engage in daily movements. Long-term changes. Long-term changes in the fish faunas of the lakes are poorly documented. They are, however, inevitable because the chemistry of lakes changing with the accumulation of nutrients and other ions from the surrounding land and the physical environment changing with the accumulation of sediments. A gradual addition of species also is likely as species enter lakes through outlets or inlets. Actually, the types of changes that are likely to occur naturally in lakes can be understood more or less through the study of lakes that have been strongly affected by humans through cultural eutrophication and the introduction of exotic species. The climatic fluctuations. Changes in climate are likely to cause fluctuations in the compositions of lakes, fish fauna, mainly as a result of their effect on water temperatures and lake level. Most fish have a limited ranging of temperatures at which they will spawn. If these temperatures are not reached, spawning will not occur. If they are reached late in the season, the embryos and larvae may face larger populations of small predatory fish. In either case, reproductive failures is likely. The species, or at least the year class, is likely to be less abundant in the future. Seasonal changes. Seasonal changes in the fish fauna of lakes are related to a combination of reproduction and seasonal movements. The major fish species in lakes tend to reproduce at different time, which result in a definite succession of planktonic larvae in the open waters of lakes during the summer, as well as successions of abundance of juvenile fishes at the inshore areas. Many adults and juvenile fish make seasonally migrations to different depths or parts of lakes, thereby resulting in a seasonally changing species composition in some habitats, particularly in shore areas. Lastly, the daily changes. The activity patterns of most lake fish are to light, so striking differences can be found in the distribution of fish within a lake according to the time of day. Vision-oriented predators are most active during the day, often with peaks of feeding in the early morning and evening hours. When invertebrations become more available, zooplankton are moving upwards beneath insects starts become active, and flights of terrestrial and aquatic insect adults increase.
Zone. The designation of the zone in lake is even more arbitrary than in stream because lake fish are commonly free to move from one zone to another. Fish in lakes, however, do tend to sort themselves out along environment ingredients during the summer month. When mass individual and population growth occurs as a result, distinct cluster of species tend to be associated with the road habitat types within lakes. And these associations can be described as fish zone. Within each fish zone, the species tend to segregate further by microhabitat and food preferences. As example of these patterns, the zone in two lakes will be described here is small to Lake Long Lake and large Scoodwater Lake. Long Lake. The lake in north central Minnesota is somewhat useful for its battable like morphology, deep and steep side, as well as for its clarity. These same factors, however, result in sharp environment gradients and easily observed fish zone. Four zones are recognized in the lake. First, the shallow water zone. Second, the aquatic plant zone. Third, the deep water zone. And fourth, the open water zone. The shallow water zone occurs in water less than in deep as is strongly influenced by wave action. The aquatic plant zone is characterized by dense bins of mixed species of aquatic plants that are between 1 and 9 meter deep. The bins are thickest and most diverse and deep between 2 and 3 meter, and populations of the 6 months abundant species are the densest here. The deep water zone is found below the water limits of the aquatic plant bins and below the epithelium, thus it is called dark and bottom. The open water zone, which is away from the influence of the bottom of characterized by large schools of jewel, peach and by all size cheese of willy. The walleye gently move inshore to feed during the evening. Lake 2. This lake is a large surface area 304 kilometer deep mean 313 meter. Unclear, the bottom of is visible and at 20 to 30 meter. Mountain Lake on the California Nevada border. The six negative fish species that now are characteristic of the lake also are found in the local streams. Originally, the main piscivorn in the lake cutthroat trout, but it has been replaced by lake trout, rainbow trout, and bound trout. In addition, salmon have been added to be found. The lake can be divided into the three broadly overlapping zones. First, the shallow water zone. Second, the deep water benthic zone. And third, the mild water zone. Reservoirs. Reservoirs are treated separately in this chapter because they typically are not lakes, although they are often labeled as such. They share species with lakes and are big open bodies of water, but they behave very differently. Those used mainly for power production often more are like giant ravine pools than lakes because of the high tomar rate of the water. Those used mainly for water supply typical strong season fluctuations in deep and area, which prevent the establishment of bins of aquatic plants or other types of habitat. The fluctuating condition on short and long time scales confer instability in reservoir fish assemblies. Each species, wherever generally is most characteristic of one of the zones. First, the inshore zone. Second, the open water zone. And the third, the deep water benthic zone. The inshore zone is associated with the side of the reservoir. Fish are most abundant where the bottom are soft and the water less than 3 meter deep. But adults of larger species also commonly are associated steep rocks area. The typical species of this zone are sunfishes, buckbass, common carp suckers. The open water zone has to mass reservoir species at some stage in their life cycle, but it is characterized consistently by plankton feeding. Shadharder rotors, typical white bass, maroon, cyclone, but often stop bass. The deep water benthic zone contains mainly predatory catchfish and fish that subsist determ or feeding insert large. The detritus typically are suckers and common crab.